There's no summit finish on day one in the Alps. Nonetheless, stage 17 has the most climbing of any day in this year's race. 58.7 kilometres of it, including the Col de la Croix de Fer, and two cols combined into one monster, the Telegraph and the Galibier, at 2,642 metres, the high point of the Tour. First man over the top will win the Souvenir Henri de Grange. Anyone who's dropped will find it hard to make up time on the fast run down to the finish in Serre Chevalier.
Yes, it's downhill to the finish, but it may as well be a mountaintop finish. It's two massive climbs, the Telegraph, Galibier, coming right after each other. Big day. So yeah, it's I think the way I see it is this is now a two-day block that both days are going to be absolutely crucial.
Now that Chris Froome quote was 23 seconds long, which is the span of time covering the Tour de France podium as it currently stands. Froome, Fabio Aru and Romain Bardet. Add 6 seconds and you reach Rigoberto Urán. Any three of those four could still stand on the Champs-Élysées in any combination. The only other rider within 2 minutes of the race leader is his teammate Mikel Landa, restored to 5th yesterday after Dan Martin got caught out in the crosswinds. He's 7th now at 2:03, a second behind Simon Yates. Yates has a healthy 3 minutes 58 over his rival for the white jersey, Louis Meintjes. With Richie Porte crashing out and Greg Van Avermaet striking out so far in search of a stage win, Damiano Caruso is BMC's best hope of salvaging at least a top 10 finish from the Tour. Nairo Quintana and Alberto Contador were aiming much higher than that. They're now riding for stage wins and pride. Warren Barguil says he fancies another stage win today. If he heads out early to clinch the King of the Mountains jersey and then keeps going, he might have a decent chance. Now, down at the start, rumours were swirling, their preferred means of getting about, and they were swirling around the future of Nairo Quintana, reported by Colombian radio to be leaving Movistar for either Astana or Sky. Our Nairo correspondent Matt Rendell reckons he's going to neither, but the Sky's Mikel Landa is joining Movistar, so there's clearly going to be some competition there. And Matt did confirm that Marcel Kittel is definitely joining Katusha. Whether he'll be taking the green jersey with him will depend on Michael Matthews and the mountains, his lead having been cut yesterday to 29 points. And on the subject of Michael Matthews, the race jury announced this morning that they'd be taking no action against John Degenkolb for grabbing him by the neck after the pair of them crossed the line. Now, approaching the first climb, there was a touch of wheels or something in the bunch that sent riders off the road left and right. Steve Cummings went left into a field and a relatively soft landing. Marcel Kittel went down hard on the right. So did Warren Barguil, the mountains leader, but it was Kittel who looked the worst off, with rips to the shoulder of his jersey. He eventually restarted, only to realise that one of his cleats was damaged. That took a rolling shoe swap at the team car. And by the time the medical team had finished dressing his wounds, they'd taken him pretty much to the back of a slowed down field. Out front, a large break formed and Thomas de Gendt and Michael Matthews attacked off the front of it. De Gendt was looking for maximum mountain points on the second category Col d'Ornon, the first climb of the day. Matthews was looking to stop him on behalf of Warren Barguil and managed it pretty easily, so de Gendt had to settle for 3. When it came to the sprint, de Gendt didn't try to do the same, not that he'd have had much chance, so Matthews picked up 20 points to pull within 9 of the green jersey Marcel Kittel. On the 24-kilometre drag up the Col de la Croix de Fer, Nairo Quintana attacked once before falling back, then set off again after Alberto Contador when he attacked. But although Contador tried to wait for him so they could work together, Quintana couldn't keep his wheel, so the Spaniard set off on his own, eventually catching the large breakaway group that contained his teammates Jarlinson Pantano and Bauke Mollema. Out front, de Gendt and Matthews were joined by Danny Navarro of Cofidis, and approaching the top of the Croix de Fer, those two dropped Matthews, leaving de Gendt to take 20 points at the top and pull within 56 of Warren Barguil, keeping his polka dot jersey chances alive, at least mathematically. Shortly after Matthews was caught by the Contador group, though, word came through that Marcel Kittel had been forced to abandon following his crash, leaving the Australian as the new green jersey on the road. And that was followed by the news that Dan McLay had gone too. At the foot of the Col de Telegraph, Contador lost one helper in Jarlinson Pantano and then needed a bike change, after which FDJ's Rudy Mollard kindly paced him back to the group. At the summit of the Telegraph, Primož Roglic took maximum points, and that pulled him to within a point of Thomas de Gendt, the pair of them trying to keep Warren Barguil from claiming the polka dot jersey as long as possible. So just one summit and one descent left on the stage.
What a vista, what a setting, and what a race we've got on the Galibier. Passing up to 2,600 plus metres of altitude and the sun peeking through these storm clouds. The threatened rain has stayed away, but the threatened race has brewed up nicely. A very, very select group of GC riders now alongside and with the yellow jersey. But up the road, Alberto Contador and Serge Pauwels, Primoz Roglic, Matthias Frank and Darwin Atapuma are trying to power away up the Galibier. They still have 9.3 kilometres of climbing. Alberto Contador has used up all his teammates, has used up first Jarlinson Pantano and then Bauke Mollema to stretch out an advantage that at one point touched 5 minutes. It is creeping back now to 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Pauwels is looking very good from Dimension Data, the Belgian all-rounder really, and an excellent climb he is putting in as well. That is the situation in the yellow jersey group, and a frightening show of strength from Team Sky, still with Michał Kwiatkowski on the front, and the purer climbers of Landa and Nieves sitting on his wheel have yet to be exposed. Pauwels wants to get rid of Roglic in particular, I think, and all of the rest of them if he possibly can. He senses he's strong enough and looks over his shoulder and thinks he can solo his way over the top of the Galibier. And interestingly, Contador didn't want to be the rider who closes that gap. Contador will probably be looking towards Roglic, I would imagine, and pick that wheel and try and lay that straight onto it, actually. Contador has identified Roglic as the most powerful rider in these sort of circumstances. He's going to use him now to try and get back up to Pauwels. This is where the gradient kicks up into the black again. Gradients of 10 and over % here, all the way pretty much unremittingly to the top. 2 minutes and 38 the advantage from Pauwels back to the yellow jersey group, and Roglic, I don't know if he'd be well advised now to start playing reverse games with Contador rather than allowing himself to be the one who every time this happens seems to be picked on to do the work, because he can't do it all on his own. And now he does look across to Contador and say, I can't do this on my own, you're going to have to help. And Contador might be bluffed into working now.
I tell you what, is the best thing at the moment regards AG2R is that Matthias Frank is managing to stay there, which does indicate that he's going to be able to make it over the top of the Galibier before being caught by the yellow jersey group, which means that Romain Bardet, if he does attack, he has a teammate ahead.
Yeah, Matthias Frank is not really in the same race as everyone else in this group. He is obviously, if the door opens for a stage win, he will kick it down. But first and foremost, I think he's still in this group with Romain Bardet in mind. Everyone else is fully committed to just riding out and trying to get a stage win. But there is a kind of selection within that group, and clearly Pauwels, Contador and Roglic are the strongest, and Atapuma and Navarro aren't able to contribute at the front at the moment. And in fact, Navarro is losing contact with Darwin Atapuma's back wheel and popping off the back again. I think Primoz Roglic is a Grand Tour contender in the making for years to come. He's 27 years of age now. He won an individual time trial on the Giro d'Italia that really announced himself as a time trialist, but he can climb. And he's taken his first big GC win this year as well, the Tour of the Algarve, finishing second on the Queen stage in a summit finish to Dan Martin. So he can definitely climb with the best in the world, and he has closed that gap, and look how composed he still looks. That's the situation back in the yellow jersey group, who we haven't seen for quite some time. Aru just out of his saddle and weaving, bobbing from side to side. Villamoz is still there alongside Bardet. Barguil, another good ride from him in the polka dot jersey, could potentially seal the deal and still win the jersey today if he scores mountain points at the finish. But for that to happen, it would have to come together, and Dan Martin looked as if he was just seeing the left-hand side of the road as an opportunity to attack. And don't forget, this group are 8+ kilometres further down the road. He signalled his intention to make good on the time losses he sustained in the crosswinds yesterday, and instantly he has gone up the road and opened up a big gap.
Wow, that's a very competent attack. To attack 6.5 k's out from the top of the Galibier, that's a big ask for any climber to make it to the top when you've got still 3 riders from Team Sky now. And Roglic has now dropped them, so he's just forging on his own, because you can see Alberto Contador clearly wasn't playing games. It was playing games to survive the move. Now Serge Pauwels now realises that they're weaker. He's got to get back on Roglic, get back on terms as quickly as possible. He can't let him get too far, because not only is he a good climber, he's a good in a time trial. So once he's got that gap, it's going to be hard to close it down. So Serge Pauwels needs to react immediately.
There he is, Dan Martin, and looking very composed and very strong. I mean, just totally like he's been looking the whole way around on the Tour de France, and he has had the most unfortunate time of it. Slightly out of position, possibly, arguably in the crosswinds yesterday, and then also left a little bit isolated by his team. But other than that, he's done nothing wrong except for suffer ill fortune. And that's a strong attack.
Kwiatkowski's still on the front, so they're trying to use him up as much as possible. And he's holding him there. There he goes. Kwiatkowski's now done. He's done as much as he could. Oh, no, it's Nieves. I think that's Nieves that's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Nieve, that's a surprise. So his climbing domestique for Chris Froome is now gone. So Kwiatkowski's ridden Nieve off the wheel.
Another domestique dropping off as well. Alexis Villamoz, Romain Bardet could have done with him, but it looks like Villamoz is beginning to lose contact. Mikel Nieve, once again, as he did, I have to say, the other day, leaving Chris Froome a little bit isolated, got back on and was able to help, but signs that Nieve is a bit in trouble there. That just does leave what is left of Michał Kwiatkowski and then Mikel Landa, who is still looking rock solid.
Aru has to go. One of them has to go soon, or because they're waiting. Aru's hoping Bardet does, and because this is a critical moment.
All right, Dan Martin has a slender advantage over the yellow jersey group. 2 minutes 45 seconds, though. Primoz Roglic has exploded the front of the race. 5.6k to go. Five and a half K to go on the Galibier. Alberto Contador sits on the wheel of Serge Pauwels. He's got Matthias Frank thinking about Romain Bardet, possibly behind him on the road, his team leader, and Darwin Atapuma for company. But look at that explosion there from Primoz Roglic. That is an extraordinary ride from the Slovenian. Well, I mean, no one could even come close to matching that pace.
No, and he still looks very smooth. And he's not there you go. Kwiatkowski's just come to a standstill. Wow. And yeah, we expect that to happen. So now it's Mikel Landa has to control the race. So the rider on GC, who's fifth on GC, is going to have to be domestique.
And he will be. He's shown no signs, I don't think, of doing anything other than that. 5k to go.
It's still a long way, 5 kilometers to go on the Galibier. It's such a, it just gets, as I keep saying, gets harder and harder as the altitude increases. And it's going to be Dan Martin hitting out so far has put a lot of stress on the race. That's what's happened. That was the moment Kwiatkowski then trying to accelerate to limit the gap to Dan Martin caused Mikel Nieve to be dropped off the wheel. Now we've got Mikel Landa, who is looking good. Any concerns there were from that grimace down in the valley when Mikel Nieve asked how he was, I don't think there's anything to be taken from that because he's looking very strong. Now Dan Martin also is looking great. It looks like he'd thought about this all day, the fact that he's wearing that skin suit rather than just the shorts and jersey.
Nonetheless, he's only about 40 metres ahead of Mikel Landa and Chris Froome. So he hasn't quite got clear yet and broken away definitively. He's beginning to sweep up the remains of that breakaway group, and the rider he just passed was Bauke Mollema from Trek Segafredo. Atapuma goes. That's something of a surprise. Darwin Atapuma has found the strength to go past Pauwels, Frank and Contador, and he's trying to ride up onto second place on the road. But I think catching Primoz Roglic, this would have to be something very, very special from Atapuma because Roglic is flying. Oh, this is agonising to watch from Dan Martin's perspective here because Landa is dragging him back. 7th place, 2 minutes and 3 seconds down. Dan Martin, so much time he lost, almost doubling his disadvantage to the yellow jersey yesterday in the crosswinds, trying desperately to make that up.
So Barguil's come to the front now, so that's interesting. Perhaps he senses he wants to get to the top. There's a chance with 4Ks to go that if he can bring this back, he can get maximal points. He wants to try and bring back Roglic, maybe.
Well, can he? That's the question. Roglic is 2 minutes and 37 seconds further up the road. Barguil goes now. Now, Barguil is he's interested primarily in King of the Mountains points at the top. He's not going to claim maximum points unless he does something extraordinary and gets across to Roglic, but he could sweep up some significant points that might just clinch him the jersey at the end of the day.
Well, again, tactically, that's great because it means if Bardet or Aru go, they've got Barguil they can bridge up to, who they know. They can say, look, we'll work together, you work with me, and you take all the points. So that's, and he's looking strong, but Mikel Landa is just going to sit at a controlled pace now. He doesn't need to trace down Barguil. He's not a threat on GC.
Romain Bardet's big attack has come, and it's come in about the last 5 kilometres of the climb. And the yellow jersey now deposits Mikel Landa standing by the side of the road. So Chris Froome is isolated. He's had to respond to Romain Bardet's big attack. It's come. Uran, once again. The man that Chris Froome has identified as the dark horse for the general classification is lightning sharp and reacts and gets onto the wheel of Chris Froome. And Froome shuts down Bardet. Martin comes across. Landa is still in this race. That was the moment he attacked.
Aru can't even do anything. Like Aru sees it happen, can't even get out of the saddle. Whereas Chris Froome, in his usual fashion, just sits down and spins his way back up to him. Uran looking very, very strong. But now Bardet has to just push this. He's got to push this and hope they crack. If he gives up, look, Aru is in trouble there.
Fabio Aru and Louis Meintjes and Simon Yates. Now, Simon Yates is not threatened in the white jersey competition because the man in second place in the white jersey competition is Meintjes, and he is alongside or slightly in front of Simon Yates at the moment. So that's secure, but he's losing time to all these jerseys further up the road. The yellow jersey, most specifically, the race leader. That's that group. They're starting to play games now, and Bardet just looks across at Chris Froome and wonders which rider is going to attack next. Landa, because that deceleration is back on, and so too is Dan Martin.
Landa really is in control. He's just lets the attacks go, lets Chris Froome follow them, and then just follows back on at his own pace and takes control again.
Bardet attacking. Now it's Froome again who closes the gap, and Uran not quite as sharp as he was in closing that down, but it's still the same three riders who are proving the strongest on that galibier, and Dan Martin battling to get on terms with those riders. Aru still hasn't quite got onto Landa's back wheel, and Meintjes and Yates sitting on his wheel. Martin is passed by Landa. Landa, one big acceleration, and he'll close to Uran, and Martin might have a job on his hands getting there, but it's a little deceleration again from Romain Bardet will allow Dan Martin back on. They get across to Warren Barguil in no time at all. It was Simon Yates in the white jersey, definitely loses contact now with this group. Aru hasn't given up though, and he won't give up. Martin goes again, and a light weary look from Chris Froome and a shake of the head as that traditional riding style, as he for the third time now has to shut down an attack. This time though it's not Bardet, it's Dan Martin, his second big attack, and Bardet is on the wheel of the yellow jersey, and who'd bet against Bardet having another go? Well, that's the view from on high, looking down onto the upper slopes of the Galibier, where Primož Roglič has disappeared from view for the time being. He's still got 2 kilometres to go. There he is. The camera finds him again in his lone battle against the gradients and against the mountain and against the rest of the Tour de France, holding on to a 2 minute and 13 seconds advantage over the yellow jersey that has started to play games with itself, and he's got some 400 metres of road between him and the man in second place on the road, the Colombian from UAE Team Emirates, Darwin Atapuma. Exciting ride from Alberto Contador, although the signs are right now that he's going to come away fairly empty-handed from today's stage. He's certainly not making any inroads on Atapuma, and certainly not on Primož Roglič further up the road. Don't forget about Matthias Frank though. Romain Bardet still has one rider, and he is a little bit further up the road now, only about 45 seconds alongside Alberto Contador as Warren Barguil goes on the offensive again. Now, Danny Navarro from Cofidis is in that group there, so the number of riders in between Barguil and the top of the mountain, I think, has gone down to about 4. Yes. 5 maybe, so I think there are still 3 with Contador, including Contador, Atapuma and then Roglič, so he can pick up King of the Mountains points here, and that's his next objective. Some vista that, and some bike rider this. Primož Roglič, not far to go now, 900 metres or thereabouts until he goes over that famous shoulder of land. Look at it, rocky lunar landscape, no trees grow at this altitude, just the wind and the cold quite often and the thin air, and he has the road all to himself. Darwin Atapuma is making no impact at all on the advantage that he has on the road. And finally now that's it for Serge Pauwels. Matthias Frank holds on to Contador's wheel. So Pauwels will be caught by that yellow jersey group imminently. I think Barguil is in between the yellow jersey group and the Contador group, but not far from, I think, latching on to Alberto Contador and then probably passing him before the top of the climb, in which case he'll pick up third place in the King of the Mountains competition. 2 minutes and 17 seconds between Roglič and a yellow jersey group. At what point does this become a race-winning advantage? Is it there already? It's there already, especially with Roglič and the way he can time trial. He'll get over there and he will be completely fine. 2 minutes, that's a big gap at this point in the race, and the way the race is falling behind, there is no team chasing, there is no determined chase for the stage. It's a GC race that's going on behind, and that's a very different race to the race for the stage which we're seeing up here. Contador now has dropped Matthias Frank, or is beginning to drop Matthias Frank, who's fourth on the road. Contador has not given up on this race yet, but he's the best part of 2 minutes down on Primož Roglič, and even though he's in the final kilometre, he's still got some riding as Bardet goes very, very close to the top of the Galibier now. He will have, what, a kilometre, maybe a bit more, and off he goes. And this time, Uran goes past the yellow jersey. Everyone else is put into the red again. Dan Martin just about lives with this acceleration, but it's a big move from Bardet. He just wants to get himself a small advantage. Now, remember, he's got Matthias Frank up the road, who he can work with, but he has done nothing to shake off the yellow jersey, nor, for that matter, Rigoberto Uran. Over the top of the Galibier goes Primož Roglič. He's now on 80 points. Barguil is coming back to the Bardet group as Bardet just puts the hammer down again and puts Dan Martin into a little bit of trouble, and Mikel Landa is surprisingly, he's riding as hard as he can to remain in contact with this group, and he is still in contact with it, but the stunning strength that he showed to this point, Landa, just a hint of weakness today. Atapuma's going to take second place and 15 points in the King of the Mountains competition over the Galibier. Contador, can he hang on to third? If so, he's going to deny Warren Barguil. No, he can't. Barguil picks up another 12 points in the King of the Mountains competition. And he now takes the big favourites over the top of the Galibier, and Fabio Aru finds himself the wrong side of a nasty split, and it's going to be extremely hard for Fabio Aru to close that gap on this long 28-kilometre descent and then approach to the finish line in Serre Chevalier. And the big loser appears to be, at this moment, Fabio Aru, as Primoz Roglic, if he can hold on to his advantage, which he should be able to do, is looking at a coronation ride into Serre Chevalier on stage 17. Fabio Aru is the rider with the most to lose, and he is losing it at the moment. Fabio Aru, with Louis Meintjes not helping him and not contributing at all, is potentially watching his podium place disappear up the road as Rigoberto Urán and Romain Bardet, the yellow jersey, and Warren Barguil stretch out their advantage on this long, sinuous, lightning-fast descent off the Galibier. Not overly technical, sweeping, a pure speedster's descent. And Aru has just got no allies, and that's the problem, because these riders can take each other's line and take turns at the front, and when they hit the flatter roads, that will be even more hurtful potentially to Aru's prospects. He only had 11 seconds to play with to Urán, and I think those have already gone.
Well, he's also got the fact he's got Mikel Landa in between this group and Aru, so when he catches Mikel Landa will just sit on him. And, but he has got the benefits of Meintjes there, who will want to make sure that Simon Yates doesn't come back, so he does have one ally. Meintjes is racing his race, which is the white jersey race.
Wow, look at that shot. That's magnificent. Primoz Roglic, in case you didn't know, and a lot of people do, but it might come as news to some of you, is a converted ski jumper. That was his first discipline, and obviously a man for the mountains. Extraordinary story. He's come to cycling very late and made an instant impact. 27 years of age, Primoz Roglic.
Landa's made it back on, so great descent from Landa, because they really are pushing on here.
Well, in Romain Bardet, you've got one of the best in the world. And that's the gap back to Fabio Aru now. So he's not too far behind, and he's got a few more wheels in between just to use to guide him back to that yellow jersey group if he can. That must be Contador and the remains of that initial group.
Dan Martin.
Matthias Frank must be there as well, somewhere. But still, Primoz Roglic is holding firm. 1 minute and 35 or thereabouts. He took over the top of the Galibier, 1:26. That's okay. That's okay, although when the descent stops and this team, if they get together, this team I say, but they are working as a team at the moment, they could eat into Roglic's lead, especially if the headwind, as we think, is blowing all the way onto the approach to Serre Chevalier.
It's dropped a bit, the wind, so look at that, that's going to serve. Now Chris Froome's now refusing to ride. He doesn't have to, that's not his responsibility. He's safe in first place. It's up to Bardet and Urán to ride if they want to affirm their position on the podium.
Dan Martin heads the second group, or the third group on the road, excluding Roglic. And then comes Aru, and he's made contact to that group now. So Meintjes and Aru have a few wheels and a few allies to work with now, and Dan Martin is pushing on, and that will be to Aru's advantage. 1:29 to the yellow jersey group, 1:42 to Aru, so it's still in the balance, 13-14 seconds further back. If he can make up 3 or 4 seconds, he'll still be on the podium, but potentially losing out on second place. Barguil, another adventuresome, wonderful, flamboyant day out in the polka dot jersey. What an exceptional race he's having, and his team. And what an exceptional ride this is from Primoz Roglic. Waited a long time on this Tour de France to really take his moment and prise the door open, seize the opportunity, and he's doing just that. Perfect terrain for him today. And this run-in will suit him. He's such a powerful time trialist. Look at that pedalling stroke. You were saying to me, David, that you've never dared to try that.
Yeah, it's quite recent. It's only the last 4 years, people have started using it. So I never used it when I was racing. It was quite a modern development, and it's not the sort of thing I try in training.
No.
But yeah, I mean, it's highly effective. If you go wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but if you go in the descent and get on your top tube, it does make you smaller, reduces your surface area, and therefore makes you faster.
You see the willing cooperation in that group with Barguil and Rouran there. Just a flick of the elbow from Rouran, and Barguil, almost like a puppy, was so keen to respond and push on and go to the front and work. That's going to work wonderfully well for Romain Bardet. And indeed for Rigoberto Urán. They're both improving their positions in GC. And now they've got 20 seconds over Fabio Aru, and that is more than enough to play with to dislodge Fabio Aru from the podium positions and bump him down into 4th. Now the road is beginning to flatten out. 12.3 kilometres to go for Roglic, but look at this. It's basically a team time trial.
Yeah.
All working evenly, and that's Barguil, Bardet. Lander will do his turn. Urán will come through, the yellow jersey himself. That's powerful.
You can see it's a descent where it's all about aerodynamics, and as he just gets into his TT position, because it's not at all technical, you barely use your brakes the whole way down. It's fast sweeping bends on this big road, and it does benefit a small group. Now, if there was, I think the wind has dropped, otherwise that would have been a big handicap to Roglic in comparison to a group. Now you can see this group doesn't have quite the same allure of the yellow jersey group, which really is like a team time trial. And Aru is watching his podium right up the road.
Well, Frank isn't going to help. In fact, he's going to do the opposite of helping. Aru's going to be pinned to the front, and when Frank is then released into he's going to slow up and disrupt that chase, because Frank was wanting to support Romain Bardet and allow Bardet to power away from Fabio Aru. Cooperation, a little shake of the head from Chris Froome there between him and Romain Bardet. Not quite sure what that was about, because they all share the same ambition here. However, if they pin back Primož Roglic, which seems still very unlikely, they'll be competing, and indeed they are competing for bonus seconds on the line. Don't forget that as well. Assuming they don't get Primož Roglic, there'll be 6 seconds up for grabs for second place and 4 seconds for third place.
And it's not a particularly easy sprint finish either. It is full flat uphill the last 500 metres, so it does suit the sort of climbers. It's not coming into a flat sprint, so that will make it quite an interesting one.
Roglic has still got time to play with, but he cannot relent. He must keep turning those pedals as hard as he can, because this is a very, very committed group with a lot at stake here, both ahead of them on the road and behind them on the road. Romain Bardet, Warren Barguil, Mikel Landa, Chris Froome, Rigoberto Urán. Rouran, Froome and Bardet all know that Fabio Aru is the big loser here. He is pinned to the front of this group, having to do most of the work. Well, at the moment he's just got an ally in Contador, but mostly it's Aru trying to chase on. Further back down the road, the white jersey of Simon Yates is losing a little bit of time, but it's okay. He is losing out a little bit in the GC race, but his white jersey is secure.
And this is why I said it was so important to make sure you were in the wheels on this, in a group when you came over the top of the Galibier, because otherwise you're left isolated on this long descent where you do have to pedal the whole time. And he's taking time back out again, Roglic, so he is in control of what's going on. I think that in the last 20 Ks, he's lost less than a minute to the yellow jersey group, and that's with the final part of the Galibier, so he really is on a flyer.
There was always the potential for this stage to be neutralised by a combination of different factors, not least the fact that the Iswad rears up in front of them tomorrow, and they must hold something back for that race.
Yeah, they must, and it's they'll all be, the Galibier is quite a particular climb, and they'll all have a very clear indication of who's going well, who's the strongest. They've seen for the first time Aru showing weakness on the uphill, and so they're going to try and exploit that as much as possible now. That's in all of their interest. Barguil doesn't necessarily have to be helping here. He's because he's not in the GC race, and he could just sit on and try and get second place in the stage. But I guess out of general decency and respect for the group, he's contributing. Dan Martin, he had nothing to lose, really. I mean, that's the great way, much like Contador, 5th place, 6th place, it doesn't make much difference to him, so he may as well gamble. And the fact he was a couple of minutes off GC, I guess he was gambling that they might hesitate and give him enough of a gap to get a head start or get away from them. But as it happened, it ended up being the moment that really launched the final parts, the final phase of the race, and much to his detriment over the summit. As I was saying before, regards Barguil riding, probably one of the reasons is as well, in the polka dot, when he's up the road on those mountain stages, he almost expects people not to go for the points with him, and that's a question of decency. If they're not in the competition, then lead me to it. And I guess similarly, when he's in this position, and we've been talking about the unwritten rules quite often, he's just going to help out of the general decency of that position. Or there's a friendship with Bardet, which I'm not sure about, but I do think he just feels, rather than sitting on and for nothing, to go for a second place with riders of that calibre and then go on attack tomorrow and expect people to let them go for the mountains points. Yeah, that would be a bit contradictory.
Warren Barguil leads the King of the Mountains points by 49. There are 58 points left in total, 52 of them on tomorrow's stage. So it's not over yet. But he leads the King of the Mountains from Primoz Roglic, and I wonder if Roglic will try and spoil the party. Roglic is going to win a stage here, but I wonder if he can find it within himself to go on the attack tomorrow and upset Warren Barguil and actually snatch the jersey.
Well, it's going to be a proper race because Roglic is clearly coming into some amazing condition, and so is Barguil. The fact that Barguil is up there with the front riders, normally he's been on the attack from behind in breakaways, but today we've seen him go with the best in the race in that final phase. So he's recovering from all the efforts he made. So we're going to have I presume, unless Roglic doesn't recover from this, which, let's face it, you would expect, but you never know, the way he's finishing this so strong, isn't it? It's not as if he seems to be emptying himself out.
As he turns with 500 metres to go, and the road kicks up ahead in front of big crowds here at Serre Chevalier. They're going to salute perhaps a rider you won't have known much about before the Tour de France got underway this year, but now you will know an awful lot more about him. He has only entered 2 Grand Tours. This is his second. Last year on the Giro d'Italia, he made his Grand Tour bow as a virtual unknown, took a stage win, impressed everyone with his potential, but the Giro d'Italia is one race, the Tour de France quite another. That was an individual time trial. Primoz Roglic has just triumphed on what many people might consider one of the queen stages of the Tour de France, the first big mountain stage in the Alps, over the Croix de Fer, up and over the Telegraph, over the Galibier. No one had a response to Primoz Roglic, a reformed ski jumper, turning mountains to quite a different use. Primoz Roglic takes the win on stage 17 of the Tour de France, and this is the battle for second place and a 6 seconds time bonus. Froome with Landa on the front. Bardet watchful, looking at Uran. If Uran wins this sprint and Bardet is outside of the top 3, then Uran will be level on time with Romain Bardet.
Landa just coming through that corner at the bottom, just looked at Chris Froome, like telling him, I'll do this out of the lead out. So it's Mikel Landa who's dragging them all, and Barguil goes first.
Barguil goes well. Bardet opens up in the middle of the road. Look at Uran. Can Uran get round Romain Bardet? Strong ride from Bardet. Bardet, is he going to hang on for that 6 second time bonus? Challenged by Uran now on the middle. Uran is going to pick up 6 seconds. Can Bardet hold on for a third place? No, he can't. Froome just pipped Bardet to the line. By my calculations, that makes it almost a dead heat now between Romain Bardet and Rigoberto Uran in second place in the general classification at the end of the day. I think they're level on time. There were no splits in that group, but there's a big split here, and Fabio Aru is watching himself bumped off the podium places. His tongue is out. The effort has told. Dan Martin too, losing a little bit more time in the general classification. He has one more day to attack the race. Contador crosses in the line, and now, and only now, Fabio Aru reaches wearily for his computer and presses his watch, and he is off the podium places and down into 4th. Well. That was the expected outcome, wasn't it? Uran, in that sort of situation, would be hard to beat.
Chris Froome has to distance Uran tomorrow. Bardet isn't a problem, Aru less of a problem now, but Uran is a genuine threat.
For the first time, Simon Yates has looked temporarily weaker than his South African rival in the white jersey competition. Serge Pauwels had a very, very strong ride today, the Belgian from Dimension Data, the winner of this year's Tour de Yorkshire, had a good chance of winning the stage, but he found a furious competitor in Primoz Roglic. And now, and only now, Simon Yates comes to the line and stops the clock.
and stopped at 3 minutes 14 behind Primož Roglic, as we'll see on the second page of results. First page first, though, Roglic had 1:13 over the yellow jersey group on the line. Oran, Froome, Bardet and Barguil all on the same time, but Oran and Froome picking up the bonuses of 6 and 4 seconds. Oran 6, enough to leave him tied on time with Bardet. Mikel Landa was right behind them. Dan Martin conceded half a minute, and a second behind him came Alberto Contador, Louis Meintjes and Fabio Aru. There's Simon Yates losing a minute and a half of his lead over Meintjes in the white jersey competition, conceding 2 minutes to the race leader. After his brief attack, Nairo Quintana lost over 6.5 minutes to Froome and the other favourites. And while Romain Bardet was being presented to the French president, the timers were checking the hundredths of a second between him and Oran from the time trial in Dusseldorf to split them, and the split left him in third and moved Oran up to second. We'll check the new GC in a moment, but credit first for a superb win to Primož Roglic, who had his family and his girlfriend along on the stage today, and celebrated on the podium with a nod, or at least a knee bend, to his previous career as a ski jumper. Here's what he had to say about it afterwards.
Crazy, huh? So incredible, huh? And this stage on Galibier, no words, huh? Yeah, crazy.
Now, we saw Michael Matthews pull to within 9 points of the green jersey lead on the road today. Marcel Kittel's abandon meant that he took it at the end of the day with an almost unassailable lead over André Greipel, as long as he makes it to Paris, of course.
Michael, you've got the jersey at last. It's not green and gold, but it is green, and you've got one of those too. Have you got any idea what that is?
Not really, but as soon as I came off the podium, a man tried to steal it from me, and I said no. So
you know it's worth something.
It's taken me almost 3 weeks to get this little man, and I almost lost it straight away. So no, it's really nice. It's really nice. I'm really happy, and yeah, I've worked so hard for this, and for it to work out like this was not the way I had planned, with Kittel crashing, obviously. But yeah, I just hope he's okay. That's the main thing. And I heard that he was back on his bike, so he must be able to ride again, which is, I think, the best part. And yeah, in the end, as long as he's okay, that's what makes me happy.
I can say I'm very disappointed. I don't know really how to describe my feelings at the moment. To go home with 5 stage victories, I think, is an exceptional result. To go home because of a crash and before arriving in Paris is also a big disappointment. So, yeah, I think somewhere in between lies the truth about how I feel about it now at the moment. So I will just take some time now to recover, and then I'm sure the pride and also the joy over all the successes that we had here as a team will be more than the disappointment.
Now here's what the first day in the Alps has done to the top of the standings. Extended Chris Froome's lead from 18 to 27 seconds and moved Rigoberto Oran into second on the same time as Romain Bardet. Fabio Aru is off the podium as things stand at 53 seconds. Dan Martin is up to 6th behind Mikel Landa, but further back at 2:37. Simon Yates still has 2 minutes 28 over Louis Meintjes in the white jersey race, and as well as having the King of the Mountains pretty much wrapped up, Warren Barguil has ridden himself into the top 10 behind Alberto Contador. Now, as we saw, Rigoberto Oran owes his second place to his second place on the stage, which apparently annoyed Romain Bardet, who accused him of doing no work in the group up to that point. Here's what Oran said when invited to respond.
No le quiero decir nada, cada uno tiene su manera de correr, cuando uno tiene un equipo como Sky tan fuerte en un puerto 2500, pues atajar de tan lejos, con una bajada tan lejos, pues al fin he trabajado para también sacar un poco a Aru.
Canal 1, súbeme si puedes.
Ahora claramente tú quieres estar sobre el podio y mañana tú puedes tal vez ganar el Tour.
Bueno, queda un final bastante duro, bastante complicado, y mañana pues intentará nuevamente.
¿Mañana tú vas a atacar?
Bueno, pregúntele a Bardet.
Well, we couldn't spend all evening running between them carrying notes, and anyway, Matt Rendell had to wait behind the podium to interview the man who's still on course to be on the top step of it in Paris.
Chris, well, after all that climbing, attacking, recovering and descending, you now lead the Tour de France by a grand total of 27 seconds, which must seem like a huge margin after what you've been through for the past few days.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a massive margin when I compare it with other years at this point, but it's a margin that I'm nonetheless pretty happy with. I think certainly if I went into the time trial on Saturday with the same margin, I'd feel pretty confident.
But in the meantime, there's the Izoard tomorrow. What are your thoughts going into that? How strong do you feel? How good do you feel? How do you see your rivals?
I think, first of all, I just need to thank my teammates for today. They rode out of their skins today to keep this jersey on my shoulders, as they have all tour. It's been so impressive to watch from behind. They've really controlled the race, even though we're under a lot of pressure. I think I'm certainly feeling a lot better than I felt in the Pyrenees a week ago, which is a great sign. It's what I aim to do with my training and my periodization coming into this year's Tour de France. So that's a great sign, and hopefully I'll be able to finish it off tomorrow.